Well, folks, when it comes to game news, it doesn't get much bigger than this. Welcome back to Live from the Bunker with FUBAR, and oh boy, a bomb was dropped at E3. Well, folks, when it comes to news coming out of E3, it doesn't get much bigger than this. Welcome back to Live from the Bunker with FUBAR, and wow, Final Fantasy VII Remake is actually happening. It's been teased over the years and not delivered. As some of you may remember when it was teased back for the PlayStation 2. Um, yeah, this is pretty big frickin' news. We're talking about not a spin-off, not a silly sequel or prequel or anything like that. We're talking straight up remake of the original Final Fantasy VII, which, oh my god, that game defined a generation of gamers. It really freaking did. I cannot emphasize how huge that game was. Back when PlayStation came out, I mean, that was one of the biggest reasons to own a PlayStation. It just revolutionized for both the better and the worse, console RPG games. And when you think of the original Sony PlayStation, that's one of the first things that comes to mind. Like Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, things like that. But Final Fantasy VII was just so freaking huge, and it's just completely unlike anything that console gamers had ever seen before. It was the best reason to own a PlayStation back in the day. It had the most epic story we had ever seen in an RPG up to that point, and still is one of the best stories in the history of RPG games. Just you got so emotionally invested with the characters. The story was good. The gameplay was good. The leveling up was good. The leveling up your different weapons was good. Everything about that game was so awesome. And I remember how happy people were a while back when they finally re-released Final Fantasy VII on Steam, so you could play it on your computer. Like I remember at the time, back when Final Fantasy VII first came out, there was a computer version, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I've seen that a few used game stores and on eBay and stuff going for very high prices. I don't know if it's legitimate or what the heck it is, but it could just be a hack. But I think I remember that coming out on the PC back in the day, but I may be wrong. This is huge news, guys. This is massive news. It was undoubtedly, one of the best, if not the best, RPG of all time, if not video game of all time. Just so incredible. And people have been talking over the years about why don't they remake that, especially for like all the HD remasterings we've had like this past year. Like remastering seems to be a very hot button topic with people because they're starting to remaster crap that just came out a couple of years back, which sorry, does not make any sense whatsoever for such a recent game to go back and do a remaster. Jesus, guys, knock it off. Try coming up with some original stuff. Well, you know what? This may be a remake, but it doesn't get more original than this. This is, oh, lordy lord, huge news, and a lot of people are excited. I've been watching reaction trailers on the internet, and I even saw some footage. I don't remember what site it was from, but it was people gathered around a table watching the trailer as it debuted, not knowing what they were even watching a trailer for, other than it was something that was Square Enix related. And their reaction during that video, if I can find it, I'll put the link in the description of this video. But they just went freaking nuts. And they were like yelling back and forth saying, oh, it's got to be just like a movie that they're doing or a spin-off game or something like that. But you see that trailer and you see that city, and at the very end when you see the Buster Sword, oh Jesus, You're just geeking out, and then all of a sudden, the logo for Final Fantasy VII comes up, and you're like, oh my god, what are they gonna do? What are they gonna do? What is it? A movie? Is it a spin-off? What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? And the word comes across the screen, remake, and like a shotgun blast, it was a cry of joy from every single person who's watching that event live. Holy crap. They have teased this over the years. We have begged them for this over the years. And we are finally getting it. Now, I don't think I need to say none of the sequels in the Final Fantasy series have even come remotely close to what Final Fantasy VII did. Not even remotely. I remember the disappointment of Final Fantasy VIII. That was the only one of the only times in my life that I had reserved something ahead of time. I reserved it from oh crap, I can't even remember what video game store was called back then. It was before GameStop though. It might have been an electronics boutique or Babbage's. I don't remember which chain it was exactly, but it was a store in the mall. I'd pre-ordered my game. I'd pre-ordered the strategy guide. Got a free limited edition poster with that, and I was super psyched for that game, Final Fantasy VIII, because I had loved Final Fantasy VII so much. I replayed that game multiple times, and I had never done that with a game that long before. But it's just that level of awesome. And just discovering all the little secrets and stuff. It was just such a massive world. It was like you were actually in a different world. I know that seems weird to, hear now, looking back on it. Like, I know you younger gamers don't realize, we never had anything like that before. Like, you got stuff today like Skyrim, and you've got, Grand Theft Auto, where it's this huge open world. What they did in Final Fantasy VII had not been done for us before, or at least it had not been done well. And certainly not in a 3D perspective on a console. You know what? Some other games that might have tried that before, but none of them came close to the experience we had with Final Fantasy VII. But when we got Final Fantasy VIII, it is not, you know what? And it's all in retrospect. I remember, when people first started doing YouTube, game reviews, way back in the day when YouTube was not the juggernaut that it is now. We're talking about when the nostalgia critic and the angry video game nerd were just getting their start as YouTubers, or whatever service they used back then, use now. Everyone talked about how much they freaking hated Final Fantasy VIII, and looking back, it was just meh. It's not one of the worst games ever made. This I will say, it's probably one of the worst follow-ups. I mean, you have something as awesome as Final Fantasy VII, or you have something as awesome as Jaws, and then your next installment right after that huge achievement is something like Final Fantasy VIII or Jaws 2. That is a massive freaking letdown. Jaws 2 is not one of the worst films of all time by far. Trust me, I've seen worse films than that this week. But it's a mediocre killer animal movie. But because it's a follow-up to something that great, it feels like it's even worse than it actually is. So that's, how I feel about Final Fantasy VIII. And back to what I was saying, so many people ragged on that game, but they're ragging on it less and less as time goes by, because every subsequent game in that franchise has been consistently worse, to the point where we wish they would do something as good as Final Fantasy VIII again. I mean, Jesus, guys, you have gotten ridiculously bad. But I gotta hand it to you. You're doing what we wanted. You're doing what we frickin' wanted. Other game publishers were begging them for a Mega Man game. We're not getting a Mega Man game. We'll get a Mega Man collection or some crap like that. We want a new Castlevania side scroller. Well, you can't have a new Castlevania side scroller. We're just gonna, fire our top people or move them to divisions that they don't want to work in, and they'll just go do a Kickstarter, raise the money to make a 2D side-scrolling Castlevania, and reach their stretch goals within hours. I don't think I need to go into that whole story all over again. We're begging for, Silent Hills. Konami isn't listening. Square Enix. Holy crap. It took you a long time, Square Enix. It took you a long, long time to do this for us. But thank you. Thank you for giving something to the fans that they have been begging, pleading, just outright, take our money. We want this. We want something like this. And you're doing it for us this time. You are awesome, Square Enix. But yeah, wow. The memories of that game. I remember how epic the television commercials looked. You had really never seen anything on that scale in a video game, commercial before. I mean, it kind of it changed how video games were marketed. Before, you had a video game commercial, usually advertisements for video games back in the day was like live action people, and live action people playing the game a little bit, maybe, or just something ridiculous. I mean, game commercials from back in the 80s and 90s are just so bad. So bad. But the Final Fantasy VII commercial that was on TV, it was like they weren't trying to sell you a video game. They were trying to sell you a movie, or it was like a movie trailer. Watching that thing, there's a story going on here. There are characters, and there are going to be characters we love, and there are going to be characters that we hate. We're going to be rooting for the good guy. We're going to be hating on the bad guy. You didn't get that kind of epic feel before. The way it was marketed was genius. Absolute genius. And I gotta say, it's one of the major factors of why the PlayStation took off the way it did and became that, new console. And, one of the leaders in the industry. I mean, before the PlayStation came out, it was Sega or Nintendo. That was it. Other companies put out crap once in a while, but no one really bought them. I mean, I worked at a used video game store, and I never came across a Jaguar, an Atari Jaguar, or a TurboGrafx 16, or a Neo Geo, or anything like those, consoles that came out in the 90s that, were trying to be the next Nintendo, trying to be the next Sega. None of them could do it. Philips tried, everyone tried. So many failed consoles. And here comes the PlayStation, which when it first came out, we felt about the PlayStation the same way we felt about stuff like the Jaguar and the Philips CDI. Oh, really? Another video game system? Or you got, unless you're Sony or Nintendo, we don't care, guys. We don't care. Nobody gives a crap about the PlayStation. And holy crap, did they prove us all wrong. And it was because of things like Final Fantasy VII that PlayStation is still around today. And Sony is still in business because, let's face it, guys, without PlayStation, Sony would be gone by now. I mean, why the freak do you think that they sold back the rights to Spider-Man? They are in trouble. When you have an A-list license like that, you do not sell them unless, the ship is going down and you need to, jettison stuff in order to stay afloat. That's what happened when they sold the rights to Spider-Man back to Marvel. Sony's not doing great. PlayStation's doing great. PlayStation's doing awesome. Sony not so much. Sony's not doing well at all. I mean, just like the recent crap with what's going on with the Vita being a legacy console, which basically means, it's dead to us. Just months after releasing PlayStation TV, you're going to kill that thing off. Wow, it's like the Virtual Boy all over again. But wow, Final Fantasy VII, so many good memories. So many awesome memories. grinding up so you could, be tough enough and bad enough to go against, the next area baddies. Finding all that secret stuff. You wanted to explore that entire map. You really did. And one of the things that I just loved about that game was there was a section in it where you like went around underwater in a submarine. And I didn't like you had done that once earlier in the game, but then you could go back and do it again. And I wanted to go back to on the submarine to go to this like underwater base because there were a lot of monsters in that base that were really that gave out a lot of XP. So I bought a ton of tents, so I could like go to the save point that was in that little underwater base and save and just go around and grind, go heal myself, save, go back and grind, go back, heal, save. And I remember going back to that because I needed to be tough enough to go take on Sephiroth, and I'm like underwater in the submarine, and all of a sudden, and this just blew my freaking mind at the time. One of those gigantic, I don't remember what they were called, but those gigantic Godzilla monsters, those kaiju that were in Final Fantasy VII, it's swimming around down there. And holy crap, that just blew my mind. You were in the, you weren't, in a dungeon or something. You were in the overworld pretty much when you were in that submarine. Funny to call that the overworld, but yeah, you were in like the little guy mode. You were not in the encounter itself or anything. You were going around on the mini map, and you see that thing, and like you're like, what the heck is that doing down here? What the hell is that? And then you touch it and you go into the battle with it. Oh my god, I got wiped out on that thing the first time so bad. But like I said, I just kept grinding, and I went back and I finally was able to take him out. And then I find out there's a couple more of them around the map on the fourth disc. Was it third disc or fourth disc? I can't remember. It was the last disc. Okay, back when games came on multiple discs. I don't even know if they still do because I download everything because it's so much easier. But oh man, the end game, not the end game, but that last disc of content was just packed full of stuff that you could do and games you could play, and you could go to the casino and play games, you could race chocobos. Nothing like that had ever been done before. Pretty much every MMORPG today, everything you do in those games is based on things that you did for the first time in Final Fantasy VII. It just had a huge impact on the game world. Huge. It was like the Black Sabbath of video games. Black Sabbath did not invent rock and roll, but rock and roll was all hippies and love and peace and crap, and all of a sudden here comes Black Sabbath, and everything is dark and sad and gritty, and we're not going to smile all the time. We're going to be on our album cover just looking ticked off, and our music is going to be hard, and it's going to be the kind of music you want to hear when like riding into battle in a tank or something. That's what Black Sabbath is, and that's what Final Fantasy VII was. It was taking what everyone else was doing at the time and just amped the heck out of it and gave us a dark storyline, dark, complicated characters. And at the time, it wasn't cliche. It's because things like they did in Final Fantasy VII have become a cliche because we've seen this so many times and never, ever done as well. Cloud was the brooding, angsty hero before the brooding, angsty hero had become an annoyance. Because other games have tried it and just failed. But Final Fantasy VII, wow. I also remember, and this is another thing that blew my mind, depending on your conversation interactions with the two female characters in the game. Like at one point when you're in the casino, it doesn't really have anything to do with gameplay or anything, but at one point you're in the casino and you can go on not merry-go-round, what do you call a carousel kind of looking thing, and depending on how you've spoken to each of those female characters, either one of them is going to go on that ride with you, or the other one is. And I remember when I heard that, I was like, wait a minute, these conversations that I'm picking from, things I'm saying are actually having an impact on what's going to happen in the game? What? Once again, probably did not do that. Like, they probably weren't the first ones to do that, but you really haven't seen that in many console games before. Maybe, computer games, but not on a console game. The fact that your choices impacted game, which, nowadays seems, well, of course your choices impact, the gameplay. Well, as long as you're not Mass Effect, but that's a whole can of worms for another day. But wow, I'm just gonna ride this high for as long as I can because I am just so freaking thrilled and happy about this. And you know what? When I started doing this show, all I wanted to do was talk about retro games and horror video games, just little things about games and modding and retro games. And I ended up doing a few episodes in a row where I had nothing to be happy about. Things that were going on in the game world that were making me miserable, that certain people were doing, and things that Konami was doing that ticked me off, and all the other things going on that ticked me off, with the politics going on in video games right now. But the joy that I'm feeling right now, that one of my favorite games of all time is coming back. Oh wow, this is just awesome. I'm psyched. I know this is a bad analogy, but I'm as happy as I was when I first saw the trailer for Star Wars Episode 1. Over the years, you've learned pretty quickly, just because the movie has awesome trailer doesn't mean it's an awesome movie. Learned that lesson the hard way with Episode 1 and with the Godzilla American remake back in the 90s. But I don't know, I'm very cautiously optimistic about this one. I don't know why. I really don't know why, especially seeing all the crap that the series has done in the last few installments that's just terrible. I mean, are they going to take my favorite thing and make it awful? Are they? I'm really worried about that, but you know what? I am not nearly as worried about that as I am happy. Okay, I'm like 99% happy, 1% worried. You know what? I'm just going to focus on that 99% happy. Okay? Just gonna ride that happy wave. I'm so thrilled that I have something that I can come on here and, say that is positive instead of, things I need to complain about. I feel great. This is awesome. Oh man. Well, thank you so much for listening to me ramble about this awesome video game series. I will be back later today or tomorrow to talk about a few more things that went on at E3, like the Star Wars Battlefront or Battleground or whatever the heck it's called trailer, which looks awesome. But I'm much less cautiously optimistic with that title than I am with Final Fantasy VII. I think that one could go either way, even though it does look great. But I'll talk about that in that video. But Final Fantasy fans out there, we got it. We finally got it. And all you guys who haven't played it before, you're going to see, hopefully, the Citizen Kane of video games make a comeback. I will see you next time in the bunker.
You see? You're stupid minds. Stupid. That's all I'm taking from you. Get back here, you jerk!